This is going to be a brief video on the Nissan Ariya, but more importantly, this is going to be a video where we talk about the future of Nissan, where they are as a brand, and what electrification is doing to them or for them. And we've come to this product now with a new perspective, or a changed perspective. We recently did a deep dive on the Nissan Leaf, or marked it at least, and you realize that Nissan was one of the first brands to spend a lot of money or attempt to electrify their brand. The Leaf had its problems. It was a rushed car. The engineers did not work out all of its bugs, particularly with battery packs. And in some ways, it was largely abandoned in the market, despite being around for over 10 years at this point. The Ariya is currently being sold with a Leaf at the same time. While it does exist at a different price point, it is supposed to remedy a lot of those issues and act as that stopgap product till Nissan and all the other brands in this segment figure out the next generation of this tech. If you look at the sales and where Nissan's at currently, this has not really gone the way they wanted. It showed up late. It's not that competitive, at least from a on paper perspective. But before we talk about that in the drive and where Nissan is and sort of our hopes and fears for the brand, I'm going to do my best to quickly explain what I'm in. This is the Empower Plus trim level. This is a front wheel drive Ariya. This has the bigger battery pack. You have two different packs, the bigger one being 87, the smaller one being 64. Honestly, range in either of them is not great. The 64 pack, which is the cheaper one, which you can get in either front wheel drive or all wheel drive, has a little bit over 200 miles of range. This bigger pack has a reported range of almost 300. In the real world, I haven't seen anywhere close to that. You're looking at, if you're starting with 90 to 80% battery capacity, which is where you're supposed to be leaving these things at, you're at under 200 miles of range. Again, not a problem in California or the West Coast. Big problem out here in the Midwest where we drive further distances. Power's low 200s. It's quick enough for what it is. The big thing they've done well with Ariya, and this is something they've done better than a lot of its competition from even more premium brands, is utilized the space concept for packaging. So this is the footprint of something like a Rogue with the interior volume of a Nissan Murano. They've done a good job in that regards. From an exterior styling perspective, I don't think these things are ugly. They honestly look just like they probably should for an aerodynamic CUV, SUV thing. Interior space, they sort of have this Art Deco approach. It looks very modern and Takumi crafted. Yes, a lot of this stuff is Nissan Rogue and Pathfinder Murano in here, but given Nissan's limited financial budget, honestly, and their part sharing, they've done a pretty good job in here. So with that, Mark and I are going to go take this thing for a quick drive and discuss what Nissan is today and hopefully where they're going to be in the future. Mark, we're going to put around and talk about EVs.
Or urban pacification. Isn't this a little, we're not the right people to be talking about this, since you're driving around in a 12 mile per gallon V8 and I'm driving it around in a world-crushing 5,000 pound twin turbo V8, which makes more torque.
No, Mark,
than your
I'm
car.
a 3-cylinder man now, so
yeah,
I can talk about all green vehicles. So we're, this is our take 2 of this conversation because it ran a bit long, but what I want to talk to you about and what I want to really talk about in this video isn't so much the Ariya. We've already done a video on it, and basically the takeaway of now spending time with this car is if this came out 3 or 4 years ago when the Mach-E and the Model Y and all the other first generation mainstream EVs, the EVs that like get between 200 and 300 miles of range and costs in the $50,000 to $60,000 range, it would have been perfectly competitive. Now it's too late to the game. It doesn't offer a lot, and clearly Nissan's struggling selling these cars. If you pay attention to their sales numbers for a while, I think they had like 4 or 5 months worth of inventory, and it's really probably at this point hurting their brand from a financial perspective, and they need the next generation to come out soon. Otherwise, they're in big trouble, at least in this space. And it's not that the car is bad, it's just late.
But this is their next generation.
I know.
And I'm going to say this, which I also said in the Mach-E video, and I said it in the Leaf video. Not everybody wants or can afford a $50,000, $60,000 medium-sized SUV.
Particularly from a brand like Nissan, which is not a prestige brand.
Correct. And the worst part about this is, same thing with the Mach-E. This is not doing much better overall usability. We're talking 360. We're not talking just about the EV drivetrain and the battery pack. Yes, it's not doing it.
It is better.
It's better, but it's not doing $25,000 better than a.
This is a $60,000 front wheel, 280-ish mileage CUV.
That you're losing a lot of range in the cold when it's parked outside overnight.
It's 67% right now, and I have less than 150 miles of range.
So you could spend 30 grand and get a Rogue that does everything this does for your family for far less money, and you can fill it up in 3 seconds and anywhere in the United States and not have to worry about this.
So that's why, at least today, these are not selling well. But what does that mean for Nissan as a brand moving forward? Because Nissan currently, the yen has basically made it so Nissan, Honda, and Toyota, at this particular moment, due to the yen strength, are doing fairly well financially. But for the last couple of years, their sales have been abysmal, particularly in China, which is a very important market for them.
Yeah.
And prior to that, Nissan sort of went through a pseudo rebuilding period after they got rid of Goen for either the right or the wrong reasons, depending on who you are. They rebuilt from building garbage cars and losing a lot of the market space due to the fact that their engineers were, to your point, overstretched to develop all these cars for too many markets. Basically, they had a brain drain across too many product lines, and they weren't effective at what they did.
Yeah.
They consolidated the last couple of years. Now the Rogue, the Pathfinder, the Sentra, the Altima are all okay.
Yeah.
They're perfectly competitive.
The problem with that is it's not good enough anymore. And this is my constant argument. When you're flooded in the market of hundreds of model choices all doing the same thing. They're all doing the same thing. Threaded screens, touch, control HVAC, open area
it's
cockpits.
what flavor of chip you want at this point.
I mean, they're so generic and they're all the same that there's no reason to choose this. There's no compelling reason to choose this, despite the marketing, over anything else that does the same thing. Because it has no real brand identity anymore. You put a Nissan badge, you could swap that for Hyundai, Kia, any brand. This is the same shit.
And that can be said about both internal combustion cars and EVs.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at today. They have problems. They need to address them. Where do you think they're going to be in the future, and how do you think Nissan survives as a brand? So their CEO came out a couple months ago, about halfway through the year in 23, and said the Aria isn't selling. They need to reevaluate how they do EVs. They want to build different EVs for different markets. So in developing markets where you don't drive very far, tiny little battery pack, shitty little car, costs $10,000, really cheap, and it's easy to get. And then for other markets like North America, they focus on long range, yada, yada, yada. Do you think that's a good idea, or?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. If I did, I would be an executive in some car company. But what I do know is you have to look at what's going on around you. And you can't compete the same way that you competed before, because like Hyundai and Kia have taken over what Nissan used to do.
Cheap and cheerful,
yes,
good value.
And they do it better. And
yes,
regardless of all quality issues and all that, you look at their EVs and you look at their cars, they've surpassed Nissan at what they used to be good at. So, the other part is Nissan as a brand does not have the money to tear down and rebuild. A lot of their problem is they're stretched out, and there's a lot of infighting between the Japanese side. There's a lack of cohesion in the European market, the North American market,
and the Chinese.
And the Chinese of who's in charge, what are they doing, what's the brand direction? And it doesn't seem like they have one of what they really are. And you could spin up an EV, you can spin up a sports car. That doesn't mean people are going to buy it. And with the evolution of how cars are now going to be made, and you're going to start seeing this in major form from Volvo, Toyota is going to be copying mostly what Tesla's trying to do with gigacasting, where they can literally shit out cars in half the time. Make them quicker. Their commodity stuff can pop up faster, cheaper. They can lower the prices for the customer. Nissan is not in a place where they can just, hey, you know what? We're going to scale back, throw everything out. We're going to move forward in a different direction. They're just not that brand. And until you get the push on the leadership to figure that part out and what they want to be, and not have all these like dead ends. They got dead ends everywhere. Like Infinity is just like a dead space. Yeah. They have cars that are too old that shouldn't be around. Cut it all down. Figure out where you're going and find out who you are, and then the product will follow. And this is a good example. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing right with it enough for somebody to go out and go on the limb and spend this kind of money.
Yeah, over something like a Model Y or other cars that are already established in this space.
100%.
So what is Nissan good at then? I mean, you and I, we clearly don't dislike Nissan products. like the original Z, despite all of its problems, when we did that docu-film, I do have good things to say about that car. The GTR is a special vehicle. I do think the Altima was pretty decent in its space.
Yeah.
What is Nissan as a brand identity to someone like us, or to a regular person who doesn't work for the...
I mean, right now, the brand perception is you can get a cheap car for 144 months and go on a road rage bender and crash a bunch of cars. That's what it's turned into. You're marketing and you're trying to get cars in the hands of people that can't afford them, stretch out loan payments, and what your product looks like is just a devalued, watered down, like, generic box. That's all it is. What Nissan used to be was really good built, reliable, affordable, and really well-equipped cars. And that's not enough, again. Like I said, it's not enough in this market where you have hundreds of models to choose from. In the Aria is the same case. I mean, that's personally where I'm going to leave it, Jack. Yeah, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I guess this is more of a State of the Union for this brand video, more than what we would want out of them from a future perspective, but I agree with you. It is concerning. I don't think it's, there are a lot of financial analysts like on the backside of this that are all like, Nissan's doomed. I don't think it's gotten to that point, but they definitely are in the danger zone of they need to fix their brand perception and they need to streamline their models and not repeat some of the problems they made in the late 2000s where they don't adapt, they keep things in the market too long, and then they spread their engineers too thin. All right, Mark, with that, let's wrap up this very long and somewhat depressing video.